Have you ever wondered how we write our articles and reviews? Many of our reviews are based on input and feedback from tens of thousands of real consumers. That's where the Connect panel comes in. Connect is a research panel within Which, where members like you take part in our research, review the products and services we test, and help us shape our content. You can get involved today. Not only will you be helping us with your unique insights, but you'll also get access to never-seen-before content. To find out more and to sign up, go to which.co.uk/connect.
Last year, scam victims lost an estimated £11.4 billion in the UK. And according to new figures from Action Fraud, the first 4 months of 2025 saw over 72,000 scams reported to the authorities. So with fraudsters more active than ever, we've assembled a top team of experts to answer your questions. Welcome to this podcast from Which. Hello and welcome. A special welcome to our Which members who had the opportunity to listen to this podcast a week early. And remember, if you aren't a member and want to make the most of our special 50% annual membership discount for podcast listeners, then click the link in the description for today's episode. Now then, let me introduce our scam experts who are here to answer your questions on everything from phishing to fraud. First up is Which Consumer Rights Editor Lauren Deitz. Hello, Lauren.
Hello.
We've also got Faye Lipson, Senior Researcher and Writer here at Which.
Hiya.
And finally, for everything you need to know about smart tech and how to protect yourself from hackers, Which's own Andy Laughlin. Hello, Andy.
Hello.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. It's so good to have such a big star cast from Which on the show. Can we start off then with a little bit of an introduction to how you're seeing scams at the moment? Where are we in your own individual patches? Faye, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I think what we're seeing is that generative AI tools are kind of reducing the barriers to entry, I guess, for scammers. So that you're getting less and less sophisticated scammers coming through because most of the work is done for them by AI generative tools. And there are even kind of other fraudsters providing platforms which give less sophisticated fraudsters all the tools that will create, a scam website for you in seconds and pull through logos from genuine businesses, for example. So that's a real threat at the moment, is that perhaps more and more fraudsters are just having a go because it's easier than ever.
The sophistication of scams is just overwhelming. It's a true industry now, and a global one at that. And the data shows that the UK is absolutely a target for scammers. We just see hundreds of scam reports coming through to Which every single week. The usual suspects, and then the new really quite scary and hard to spot ones as well, like your deep fakes, and all sorts, like from investment scams stealing hundreds of thousands of pounds from people, to smaller scale shopping scams that are taking 30 quid, but then people finding themselves trapped in a recurring payment that they just then don't spot coming out of their bank account every month. So yeah, it's a scary time for scams at the moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, I look at things probably mostly from a kind of technical level, but I mean, I think what's really apparent recently is two things really. Data breaches are still just a recurring nightmare continuously, and now we're also starting to see the evolution of the data breach, which is consumers being impacted by a scam affecting a company. M&S recently, I couldn't get a sandwich when I went to the one, and that's all kind of down to an attack, and Co-op, and the list goes on. So actually, people are realizing now you might not be the direct effect of a scam, but the fact you can't get a sandwich, or you can't do your banking, or if you think back to WannaCry, I couldn't get an appointment with my doctor. The scam is kind of a dotted line impact to the consumer there. So we really need our businesses to do better on that score.
Well, we've already touched on so much, and I'm sure we'll be diving into many of those little pockets as the show goes on. And today it's a special episode because we're going to be answering your questions, and these have been sent in by subscribers to our free Scam Alert newsletter and members of our Which Members Facebook community. So let's start off then. Firstly, I've got one here from Sharon, who got in touch to say, I cannot access my Facebook account. It says I have to prove who I am by sending a video of my face moving from side to side. Is this a scam, Lauren?
Yeah, what a tough one to know, to be honest. The question you have to ask yourself with any of this is, who asked you and where were you asked? So if it's coming through the Facebook platform and it's coming through on your messages and it's quite clearly a question that's come from a request that's coming from Meta, then it's possible that it's genuine. That said, I am not aware that they are rolling out the video facial recognition in the UK at the moment. I know it's something that Meta is testing, but I don't believe it's a feature that's yet available in the UK. So this could quite easily be a scam. And that's what we often see. Scammers take the opportunity to prey on people using genuine comms like this to convince people to hand over their details or, things like their biometric data. It's valuable in the wrong hands. So with any of these requests, the first thing to really ask yourself is, who is asking me? And where am I being asked? And examine the details behind that request before you just decide to do anything. Just take a minute to pause and think about it.
And where you're asked to take a video of your face or a photo of your face, seeing this question, I'm immediately reminded of those apps where you swap your face. You swap your face with someone else, or you use the app and you're 30 years older. Are they something to be concerned about? Because I know there's been a lot of talk, even just in my own friendship circles, like, are they a scam?
I mean, I think some of this might come from the Online Safety Act, because I know Ofcom is trying to push ways for get age verification. And that is a way some people are using this kind of technology to verify both the identity of the user, but also the age of the user, because it's obviously quite hard to do age ID, particularly for platforms. But I think it's really interesting what you were saying, that this is a good example where things are being brought in, maybe they're testing it, but ultimately scammers know that. They're abridged of the news as much as anybody else, and they'll know there's an opportunity to say, okay, now this feature's here, we can sort of piggyback onto it. And biometric data, face, touch, whatever, is really, really valuable, because obviously we're trying to shift away from passwords. Going to what's called passkeys, which is ultimately a kind of a instead of a phrase you pick or some terrible word that you know is easy to guess, you go to something which is pretty much unique to you. Every door that's open in terms of increasing security can also unfortunately open a door of an opportunity to a hacker who knows what they're doing.
Well, this leads us very nicely to our next question, which is one for you, Andy. And Chris asks, how can you find out when your smart products will lose security support? He adds that he bought a smart speaker 4 years ago and wants to know if he might need to replace it if it could be vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to really hammer home why this is important and why we've campaigned quite hard on it. Smart devices are obviously internet connected. They get the benefits of the internet, but also you get the risks, which is getting targeted, your data, hackers, scammers, all sorts of things. And the risk actually goes up, not exponentially, but significantly when a device falls out of support. And what that really means is the company basically isn't maintaining it anymore. They've kind of said, okay, you're on your own now. You can still use it as long as it works, but we're not going to maintain it with security patches. If some big vulnerability comes up, we're not going to fix it. So basically still using that device is a risk to you. So we want devices to stay in support for as long as possible, but also crucially, we want companies to be upfront with people. So we want this person not to be thinking, I don't know how long I've got left. We want them to know absolutely categorically. So we campaigned significantly for the Product Security and Telecommunications Infrastructure Act. Bit of a mouthful, that one. Basically, one of the requirements under that is companies are legally required to tell you when you buy the product how long they're going to support it for. Now, I would say as a caveat, that's only a guaranteed period. They can extend for longer. And a lot of companies will actually support for longer than this guaranteed period, but at least they're trying to be upfront with you, or need to be upfront with you. If you don't know, it's always worth just contacting the manufacturer, looking on the website, talking to customer services, and find out how long your product has got left. And we would say if a product's come out of support, really be wary about using it, because ultimately it is a risk.
It just isn't very good from a sustainability point of view, is it, having another reason to get rid of a product if it's not broken?
Yeah, absolutely. And in the case of a smart speaker, that's bad. In the case of a big box appliance, a fridge, a washing machine, it's awful. I think nobody wants to see more of this stuff going to landfill sooner than it needs to. And manufacturers really need to do better. We've called for mandatory minimums, so a minimum amount of time. So, our research says, a washing machine can last easily 10 years. Possibly longer, same for a fridge. We'd really like the government to look at that. It is being introduced in Europe on a phase basis, but only 5 years minimum, but it's still better than what we've got. Really people should be able to use this stuff for as long as possible. It's about value, but it's also, as you say, it's about sustainability.
Something that hopefully we'll see some change on then in the future.
Hopefully.
Okay, well, one for you now, Faye. This is on phishing emails relating to extortion. It's from Lucy. She says, I saw Action Fraud mention the public should be on the lookout for phishing emails relating to extortion, as there have been lots of reports of these so far this year. So what should you be looking for?
Yeah, this is a horrible one. It's been around for years, sadly. The typical format is that you receive an email kind of claiming that hackers gained access to your webcam, and there's not really a delicate way of putting it, but that they've kind of seen you doing something a bit compromising, and that they're going to circulate the still images from that to friends and family in your contact list, and it's really horrible and causes an enormous amount of distress to people that receive it. The absolute key advice here is not to give in to the demands, not to respond, because in the vast majority of cases it's just pure bluff and bluster. They've sent probably hundreds or thousands of these out to a long list of emails, and they have nothing on you whatsoever. Often the demand will be for payment in some kind of cryptocurrency, often Bitcoin. Yep, you shouldn't give in to these kinds of demands. A good belt and braces approach is to kind of keep your webcam on your devices covered if you're not using them, but that really is belt and braces. And many devices now will come with a little flap to put over it when you're not using it. But generally speaking, these are just nasty, opportunistic scams that target loads of people at once. And sadly, we've been seeing them for years.
And I suppose going back to something that I think you mentioned at the top around, deep fakes and AI there, people might worry about this kind of scam even more.
Absolutely, yes. So there's obviously the possibility for people, there's always been the possibility for people to create kind of abusive, unpleasant or sexualized images of you that are completely fake, but just using your image kind of grafted on something else. But now it's become easier than ever with the tools that are available. And I think sort of going back to the discussion a few moments ago about kind of funny face swapping apps and aging apps and things like that, you really have to be so careful who you give your image to, and look at the details before you trust an app or an organisation with your image. It's really rare that these things happen to people, and I don't think we should cause undue panic to people, but they are a possibility in this world, and it definitely pays to have an attitude of caution.
Well, I could ask you all so many extra questions about these, but we're going to have to move on because we've got so many to get through today. And this is actually a broad one now. So Laura, maybe if you want to take this one. This is from Seema. She says, I'm a subscriber to the scam alerts from Which, thank you Seema, and find them really helpful to find out what scams are doing the rounds. What scams do you think we might see more of later this year?
Yes, thank you. Excellent question from Seema. We see the same sort of scams appearing at particular times of year, each year in, year out, at which as soon as it gets around to the Christmas period, we see all kinds of shopping scams cropping up, Black Friday fake deals and all of those kind of things. With the recent announcements around government schemes for winter fuel payments, I suspect that we will see a lot of scams around those schemes coming through. We saw them previously, lots of text messages and emails claiming to be from DWP or from the energy regulator, Ofgem, claiming that you could cash in on some sort of energy rebate. I highly suspect we'll see some of those later in the year. Other scams that we're likely to see, we saw an awful lot of deep fake scams last year. I suspect we will see them again appearing towards the end of this year. Last year, they really picked up on the presidential campaign. There was a lot of deep fakes around political figures and Elon Musk in particular, who was apparently flogging lots of exclusive crypto deals. I expect we'll continue to see those this year. But yeah, it's the usual suspects that we will see at particular times of year.
Thanks, Lauren. Lots to keep our eyes out for there. And I should just say, if you want to subscribe to our free weekly Scam Alert email service, just like Seema, then you can do so by clicking the link in the description of this podcast. Or if you're listening on which.co.uk, then just click the link on this page. Now, Andy, another one for you here. Someone who didn't leave their name asks, what data do tech companies hold on us, and can scammers get hold of this information?
Well, obviously someone who likes their privacy, who didn't leave their name.
The same thing.
Very, very wise, I would say. I mean, how long's a piece of string, to be perfectly honest? I mean, it could be absolutely anything from something fairly innocuous like an email address right through to sensitive health data, mental health data, sensitive data under GDPR, could be, I mean, it's infinite, basically. It depends on the service. Companies are supposed to enact the data minimization principles, so that says that you only take what exactly you need. I think our research and many others has shown that companies are often a little bit generous with that, not in a kind of generous to the consumer way, and they can take a broad range of information. I think it's also important for people to realise there is information that is specific about people. PII, personally identifiable information, and then there is usage data. It's data how we shop, how we interact with services, how we choose different things over other things, and this stuff can be huge, but it can also be used very richly by companies to target behaviour, target advertising, target services, and really, as I say, the kind of potential is infinite. But I think, whether in the question whether can scammers get hold of this information, absolutely. And unfortunately, although GDPR also states you're supposed to have very good data security principles in place, often called data hardening, the reality is companies far too often drop the ball. I mean, I wouldn't even say they picked the ball up in the first place. In many cases. I mean, some of the things that you see, the origins of data breaches, keep you awake at night. You're thinking, how has that happened for a major brand that is spending fortunes on its operational expenses, has massive budgets, makes an enormous amount of money, but has left this door open. It's like leaving the back door to the factory open and hoping someone doesn't walk in and nick anything. Come on, guys, we can do better. And so we really, really need to see companies step up to the plate, because this is an endemic problem and it shouldn't be.
And as consumers, is there anything that we can do ourselves to protect ourselves against those situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there are principles we can put in place ourselves, setting, if you get to make a password, pick a strong password. If you're going to use accounts, see if there's any things that you can use, like 2FA, which is when you add a phone number or a biometric Face ID or something like that. But ultimately, really, it's down to the companies to protect us. I think if we're relying on consumers to sort out security, then we've lost before we've started. So we put our trust on our data into these companies, and we expect them, and actually they're legally required to secure it properly. So they really need to meet their obligations, you know.
I do know. And the onus being on the companies is, I think, something that we'll be coming back to later on in the show as well. Okay, so the next question then, I think for you, Faye, I really like this one actually. Sarah asks, is it possible to get a simple explanation to what the Hello Mum and Dad scam is? And she also adds that she'd like to play this podcast to her elderly mother and thinks it would be helpful for people like her to know more. And I couldn't agree more, Sarah. Thank you for asking.
Yes, so this one really came to prominence during the pandemic, I think because people were separated from loved ones. So the way this works actually is incredibly simple. You'll receive a message from an unknown number that says, hi mum or hi dad. And the reason it's so effective is because, you know, a really high proportion of people are a parent of a teenager or a grown-up child. So it wouldn't be unusual to receive a message like that. And the message will go on to say something like, this is my new number, I've dropped my phone or smashed my phone and this is my new number, just save it. And then if you do that, then a few days later, you're likely to receive a follow-on message saying, it's some kind of sob story normally saying, I need money to pay for the gas bill, or I need money to pay for something else, and bank details will be given and you'll end up making a payment, and it's not your child, it's a complete stranger, but it's so effective at just slipping under the radar. The best way to deal with this is if you receive any message from an unknown number that's claiming to be from your child, you've got to check that at the source. So I would recommend contacting either speaking to the child face to face, or contacting them through the previous trusted contact details to see if they still work. And if they do, then you know it's nonsense, which it normally is. And another thing you can try is having a kind of family password. So you can ask for the family password, and if the person doesn't know it, then it's clearly complete nonsense. So yeah, just one to be wary of.
Very, very worthwhile covering that one. And I've got the next one here, and this is from Jamie, who says, I recently saw an advert for a pressure washer on social media. It seemed like a good deal, so I thought I'd buy one to get the garden looking nice for summer. 2 weeks have passed and nothing has been delivered. If this is a scam, where do I stand, Faye?
Yeah, so, I mean, I really hope it's just a delivery issue and you don't have to deal with the annoying life admin of trying to get your money back after a scam. But if it is a scam, where you stand kind of unfortunately depends a little bit on, well, very much so, on how you paid, and also to an extent how much the pressure washer actually cost. So if you've paid via PayPal, they have their own buyer protection scheme. You'll need to kind of raise a claim within your PayPal account to try and get that sorted. If you've paid by card, you need to contact your bank or your card provider, and this will kind of let them know as well that your card details may have been compromised, and they'll probably reissue the card, but they'll also look at whether you're eligible for a chargeback, which is where you get reimbursed on a debit card or a credit card if the payment amount was under £100. So you could get your money back through chargeback. If the pressure washer cost more than £100 and you bought it on a credit card, then there's an extra strong scheme called Section 75, which is almost like a legal requirement to be reimbursed. But it's probably unlikely that you spent that much on a pressure washer. It could have been less than that. So you're probably looking at chargeback, whether it was a credit or a debit card. If you paid via bank transfer or bank payment, then it's a little bit different again. So since October, there are new rules in place that fraud via bank transfer generally gets reimbursed. However, some banks apply a £100 excess. So again, if you've spent less than £100 on this item, you might find that you basically get nothing back. But it really is worth speaking to the bank ASAP if you think you've been scammed, to see what they can do, and so that they can secure any details on your account that you may have given unwittingly to a scammer.
And while we're on social media, are there any tips you'd give people for recognising scams on the platforms?
it pays to just do a really little bit of due diligence whenever you're clicking through to an advert. Look at the actual page that's posted that advert. See if it's, first of all, whether it's got kind of like a verified status that kind of varies slightly from platform to platform, but a lot of them will have like a verified status for recognised brands. So if it's verified, then it's probably okay. Also look at when the page or the group or profile was created, because if it's claiming to be kind of a really well established brand that's been around for decades, but it was actually created like 3 days ago, then that's a straightforward copycat. So those are really quick things you can look for as well. And check reviews online, although be aware that positive reviews can be faked. So, lots of different things at your disposal to do a really quick check before you actually click through and give that organisation your money and your details.
And I've got a question which leads on nicely, and this is the last question I have. It's a good one to end with, I think. It's from Masood. He asks, what are the big tech companies doing to stop scams on their platforms? I feel like I'm seeing more dodgy posts every week, especially on our local Facebook group. Great question. What are they doing?
I mean, I think, there is a sort of a kind of a backwards way of thinking about this, isn't it, in a lot of ways. The tech companies are obviously want, especially things like Facebook and social media, they want to get as much content on their platform as possible. That's the kind of primary goal, because more content means more dwell time, they call it. Well, being on the platform more, the more time you're on the platform, the more valuable you are to advertisers. That's the name of the game. Now, if you're in the business of getting lots of content on there, and this has been the case for a lot of companies, it includes Google as well. If you're in the business of more, the thing that really helps with preventing this stuff is making it less. So that's not in your interest, is it? You want to make it easier, you want to make it faster, you want to be able to put things out there and broadcast yourself. So there's a natural conflict, isn't there, between the protective measures and the business model, and all too often the business model kind of wins. Obviously, we're seeing some rebalancing of that with the Online Safety Act and a few other regulations that are coming through, but it is quite slow going. So you're relying, I think, a lot of time with these big tech companies to being as engaged as they want to be, and often they don't tend to want to be that much if you really break down all the PR bluster that comes with it.
Yeah, I would just say that we are seeing some positive changes, and I would say that that's been mostly fueled by the Online Safety Act and the obligations that will be coming for tech companies over the next few years. However, we have also seen some concerning changes to the way that some tech companies have approached moderation. I know Faye has done a lot around this. And, where we've seen human moderation, which is potentially far more effective, we're seeing less and less of that. And it maybe moves towards more like AI moderation. We're yet to see how effective that really is.
It looks like platforms are trying to take steps to kind of ramp up their AI moderation. But what we're seeing, I think, as a result of that is that some of these attempts are kind of slightly clunky and unsophisticated and can't differentiate between the actual scam content itself and attempts by legitimate users to warn about scams. So we're sometimes seeing scam warnings taken down or threatened with being taken down. So I think there's a great deal still to do to make these approaches kind of more sophisticated so that people can educate about scams and not be fearful that their account's going to be suspended, while actual scammers often seem to have free reign of the platforms. Yes, a great deal more to do, I think, and more sophistication needed in the approach.
One to come back to, perhaps. Another one to come back to later down the line. Well, that's the last question I've got from you, our listeners, our members. Thank you so much to everyone who got in touch with a question. Unfortunately, we couldn't get through them all today, but hopefully we'll be able to do another episode like this one soon. Just before we wrap up then, can I get a final word from all of you? Some top tips on staying safe from scams, or anything else really that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I spend a lot of my time thinking about the technical aspects, but I think actually in terms of my advice, it's actually the opposite of that. I would say to people, when we go online, we often forget our common sense principles. The things that we know every day in the street. Someone comes up to you, seems a bit weird. Someone's trying to punt something out of a shop. Hey, do you want some of this? We naturally have a skepticism of that. When we go online, we seem to almost forget that. And everything becomes kind of I'm sure it's all legitimate because they've made a website. No. So I think I always encourage people, just maintain your common sense principles, the things that have been tried and trusted for years. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Don't walk down a dark alley, digitally or otherwise, and just be healthily skeptical of a lot of stuff.
Sometimes you can't avoid it, but I do go.
Yeah, sometimes you can't avoid it. But I think, like Faye says, take in a few moments. Take 5 is the kind of principle that police often say. Take 5, think about it. If anybody's rushing you, then it's not a good idea because they're probably rushing for a reason. So maintain your common sense principles, use the smell test, and just have a healthy bit of skepticism. And if it feels slightly off, just back out. Yeah.
I like that. Maintain your common sense principles. Lauren, what would you add?
Yeah, I think the healthy dose of skepticism is one to really remember. The only thing I would really add to that one is to always really, really question, has this contact come out of the blue, whatever it is? And if it has, are you being rushed to make that decision? They're just the typical tactics that you will see with a scam. It's out of the blue contact. You need to make an urgent decision, and it's something that you are basically being rushed into, and it's just one to really always remember when you're contacted in any form. I just think it's something to just always be on your guard against a scam. You're highly likely to encounter them, whether or not it's a text message, a phone call, an email. I'm currently being bombarded by apparent job scams. I know what it is, and I know what to expect when these calls come through. But it's just healthy to remember that just pause and really question, who is this and what are they asking you to do?
Yeah, just to reiterate what everyone has just said, whenever you're being asked for your personal information or financial information or to make a payment, you just, sadly, in today's world, you just need to be suspicious by default, basically. How do I know this is genuine? How do I know this comes from who it says it comes from? And if you don't know or you're not sure, you need to think how to verify that. So how do I reach the actual organisation via a trusted contact method to check this out? And it takes longer, but sadly it has to be done in the world that we live in. So yes, just be suspicious, be skeptical by default, and check things out before you give the information away. It's so much easier to not give the info away and find out it's genuine and then give it away than to give the information to somebody that's got a malicious purpose. You can never get that back.
Well, so much incredible insight and advice from you all today. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this podcast from us here at Which. Don't forget that there's plenty more useful advice to help you stay ahead of the latest scams in the show notes, plus a link for you to sign up to our free scam alert service that rounds up all the latest scams and drops into your inbox every Thursday. We release loads more podcasts every single week, including Which Money every Friday for all the latest personal finance news, and Which Shorts every Wednesday, which showcases some of the best pieces from our suite of magazines. To subscribe, just search for Which wherever you usually listen to podcasts. And don't forget about all the other benefits that come as part of your Which membership. You can get access to all of our product reviews, our app, every issue of the magazine delivered to you across the year, and the Ask Which service for one-to-one personalised buying advice. Plus, make sure you keep an eye out for more podcasts from our team at Which.